Well, let me grab one thing here. Oh, here we go. All right. All right, today we're talking about tube lights, all right? We got a 4-foot tube, we got a 2-foot tube. We're gonna talk about, well, I'm gonna talk about why we think tube lights are pretty cool, why we think they're pretty essential to any filmmaking kit, and then talking about some of the pros, some of the cons, and yeah, why they're so neat. Now, tube lights are not always the most versatile lights and can't be used for everything. We still use lights like our 300Ds all the time, and those have a ton of options with them, but they're very different lights, and having both of them in your kit can be really essential when it comes to lighting a scene and having the right tools at your disposal. So, we'll show you a few applications where tube lights can be extremely handy, and also some of the other reasons that you'd want to use a tube light. And then, we're going to be talking about this light in specific, which we recently got. It's a new 2-foot tube that we think has some pretty cool features and that we really like, and that we'd love to see more manufacturers and more companies start adopting. So tube lights naturally have some softness to them. There's a couple reasons for it. First of all, it's just a larger source. When you have a larger source, it's naturally gonna be softer. The second reason is the distance between the LED diodes and the diffusion on the front. It's got a little bit of distance, so it has some area to diffuse it. Now, I want to show you an example of how tube lights can be used with a key light, which typically we wouldn't do for a reason we'll touch on in just a little bit. So what happens with tube lights, because there's this long source, you can do them vertically, and what happens is you get the light wrapping vertically. So that means that things like the chin, which is horizontal, it's gonna wrap the light more evenly so it smooths your shadow in the skin. When you switch it horizontal, you're gonna get a hard shadow on her chin because the light is wrapping horizontally. But it smooths out the shadow around her nose because it's wrapping around her face here and around her nose, which is vertical. So that's something to keep in mind when you're lighting with tube lights and doing key lights specifically with tube lights as your main light. Now, what they do work great for is a great kicker light. We like doing this sometimes because you can get a nice rim light on their hair and then also hit their shoulder at the same time, and it's a nice soft light. So that's a really great application. And then also, let's do the spooky ghost story lighting down here, which we love. But that pretty much covers the soft light with tubes. It's something to keep in mind. It's really important to understand how that light wraps around and whether the light's vertical or horizontal, and understanding how it wraps. So there you go. This is a super quick, basic setup we did with a single tube light to show how linear reflections work and why it's really important to keep in mind. As you can see on the bottle, you have a nice linear reflection going down the entirety of the bottle from a single 2-foot tube. This is the same shot, but using a pocket light from the same position, but we're no longer getting that linear reflection that we were getting before. One isn't necessarily better than the other, but it's worth keeping in mind when you're lighting shiny or reflective objects, so you know how to better make your decision with what lights to use. This is a scenario where paying attention to your reflections is super important. In this situation, having a linear eye light reflection isn't the ideal scenario. A much better solution for this situation would be using something like a softbox or a 4x4 frame to give them a nice circular or a square eye light. So one huge advantage of tube lights is the low profile nature of tube lights and the fact that you can hide them in a lot of places, or you can sometimes even hide them in plain sight and they can look like a practical that's supposed to be there. So one situation we find ourselves in a lot when we're on location is we might have a work desk or we might have shelving units where we want to add an accent light. And this is our gear haul, obviously, but for the example, you know, it's super easy just to be able to stick a light in there like that, and then it falls because the magnets suck, I guess. Well, it's durable, no dents or anything, so there you go. And it's super easy because you can just put it into place, requires very little setup, and you have a great soft light that you can adjust, you can tune the color. We do this all the time, and it's super, super useful having tube lights for situations just like this. A second application that we use tube lights for the most, and where their low profile nature comes in super handy, is in situations where we have drop ceilings or lower ceilings, especially drop ceilings, because we have a lot of options to mount. Now you can use scissor clamps. With this, we have a magnetic base, so we can actually just put it where we need it to and magnet right into the drop ceiling framing there, and then we can light the scene. And this is great because it's almost flush with the ceiling. It's not dipping down into our scene, and we don't have to worry about seeing that light in our scene, which is really, really great. So some of you may have already figured out already what light this is, and it's actually the Falcon Eyes IRISA 2. Now this is a company that's made a lot of different flex lights. It's actually the flex lights that we use and have used for a couple years now. And they make pretty solid products. And this one's a little bit unique. And the thing that stood out to us about this was a couple unique features that not all tube lights actually have. So the first feature that really stood out to us is it has a built-in battery. But even better than that, it actually has a removable built-in battery. Now, there's a couple reasons why a removable battery is so important, why it's such a big feature to us. A lot of lights do have built-in batteries, but not all of them have removable batteries, such as this. So this one can just be slid straight in and out. It uses a D-tap connector so that you can charge it with the supplied power supply, which also powers the unit, and you can charge the battery. So one thing that I failed to mention and specify with the power supply here is that it does not charge this battery when it's plugged in and when the battery is inserted into the light itself. It has to be removed and plugged into the D-tap connector here. So it uses the same cable. This powers it right off of AC, but it also charges the battery, but it has to be removed from the light to charge it. And it just slides back in, and then this cap screws on and has a little rubber seal here to protect it. The reasons for this being useful is, number one, the very obvious, is that it can have a lot of runtime. You can buy multiple batteries, you can have them ready, have them fully charged, and when one dies, you swap in a new one, which isn't a feature that all lights have, and you don't have that same convenience. Now, the other big reason for having a removable battery is a lot of these fixtures are very expensive, and when you're buying a light with a built-in battery, and say 5 years down the road, the battery starts to wear out from being recharged and just getting old, well, now you have a light with a bad battery and it can't be replaced. The nice thing about something like this is that it can easily be swapped out with a new one without having to send it into a manufacturer to have them professionally disassemble the light and put in a new battery. So the other big feature that we really liked about this light is that it has built-in magnets.
Yeah! Magnets! Oh!
Now, again, this is something you see a lot of times with pocket lights and smaller little portable lights, but not as much with bigger lights like this, like a 2-foot tube or even their 4-foot tube that they sell. Now, this becomes super useful for a lot of scenarios, just like in the bathroom where I showed you how we can put it on the ceiling. You can attach it right to drop ceiling grids because those are metal. You can put it in really tricky places that would be pretty difficult to rig up if you didn't have magnets. Now, the downside to this is this light is a little bit larger. With the built-in battery, it's a little bit larger, and it doesn't have great mounting. It has mounting on each end, and that's about it. So they don't ship with a lot of mounting options for this light in particular. Now, the other features that this has, like I said, I pointed out the rubber grommets on this light. It is splash proof according to them. The other last thing about it, it does have Bluetooth connectivity, which I've tested out. I haven't loved it. The app seems a little bit gimmicky, a little bit like it has some bugs to be worked out. I think I had some trouble setting it up for the first time, and then occasionally it was unresponsive and some of the controls just totally locked up on me. The app isn't great, but that being said, it's nice that the functionality and the Bluetooth is there, because that is something that could be improved with time. It's something that could change as they update the firmware. So I do appreciate that it's at least a function in there. And like I said, the other thing is, if you need, you can still control it via DMX and hook it up to a system. So you have some options when it comes to controlling this light. Now, that pretty much wraps up the features. I'm not gonna dive super deep and do a bunch of tests on this light. There's tons of great reviews out there already. Scott has one that he did a great job on, that he really covers a lot of details with different tests. So if you're interested in this light, go check out his review. I think there's a lot of great information there. I hope this was helpful. Hope you found some information. If you guys have some questions about, different applications with tube lights, or what we recommend, or or any questions at all or future video suggestions. Let us know in the comments below. We love interacting with you guys. With that, have a great day, guys. We'll see you in the next video.